In this video, we're going to talk about business rules and specifically how I set up business rules in this app here. A couple days ago, I did a video on comparing how you would do this through building it just yourself and then also through the plan approach to building a model-driven app and the differences, some of the issues that I had while building this, and then what are some of the differences and essentially who would the plan approach of using AI to kind of create your app and then just building it by yourself, who that applies to. If you want to check out that video, you can check out that link here, and that'll walk you through my comparison of using the new plan using AI or just kind of building it yourself and what are some of the issues I ran into. But in this particular video, we're going to take a look at how the business rules in this app work. So if we go ahead and select one of these items here, actually we'll select this one to begin with. If we look at this, we can see that we've only got this area up here. And for a second there, you got the little flash of something down here. And what controls that is this mileage right here. So if I select this to yes, I'll all of a sudden see this section down here. And if I put it back to no, it'll make it go away. So how do you set that up in a model-driven app? And that's what we're going to explore in today's video. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so this is the solution that I put together for this app. And we're seeing we've got a bunch of tables. Business rules are at the table level. So what we're going to do is select the expense table, because that's what we were just looking at was expenses. And we're going to go ahead and click on business rules. And that's where you would actually set these up. And we'll see that we've got mileage visibility. We've got one business rule it's turned on and its scope is to the table. So let's go ahead and open this up. Now this can take a little bit of time creating these. It does take a little bit of time. This is still using kind of the classic approach for building these business rules out. And here is the business rule that we've created here. And we can see we've got quite a few steps. This looks a lot worse than it is. Trust me, this is a very simple process. It really is very user-friendly, so just about anybody can get these working here. If we come up here, we'll see a description. And again, I didn't put that much in here, but it sets the mileage visibility based on the mileage of yes or no. It actually does a couple other things, so I probably should modify this to include some of the other steps that are in here. But if we look at this, let's go ahead and scroll over here. We've got our condition and mileage of yes or no. In the application, I selected yes, and all of a sudden I can see all the fields. When I select yes, it sets the visibility of those fields as visible. So if we click on this, we'll see that we've got the origin field. I always put the name of the field in here and that what it's doing. And if we look at it, we set origin as visible. That's all it does. And it does that for essentially all of the fields related to mileage. And that's all the fields in the lower portion of the form. And if we go ahead and scroll over here, it does some other stuff in the yes. So these are all the visible. Again, these are all the fields that show up when we do this. Now, the other thing it does is set your business required. So essentially, at the table level, these fields are not required. But as soon as a mileage is associated with an expense, I want them to fill out the fields associated with that mileage expense. So we've set the vehicle, the origin, the destination, all the mileage related items as required fields. And that's really all we've done here is we've made them visible and then we made them required. And if we scroll back over, you might say, well, what do you have down here for the no? Well, it's basically reversing all of that. So this is to handle the circumstance. Somebody selects yes, populates all the fields, and then wants to change to no. And you got to handle that as part of this, or at least it's a best practice to. If you don't do this, there's a possibility that they're going to enter something in there. They set it back to no. Maybe they're missing the odometer information, or maybe they're missing some other piece of information that's required, so they don't have everything. But they filled out a couple of the fields. As soon as they save the record, if you don't change the visibility, which is the first step, again, I try to align things here. But if you also don't clear the field, it's actually going to save whatever they selected, more than likely, to the underlying table. So you're going to have additional metadata essentially for this record that gets stored in that table. even though they might not have selected mileage of yes. So you want to clear those fields, but you also want to just make them not visible. And if we go over here, the first stuff that's in here is your visibility, and then it's going to go through the business required. Again, it's no longer required because they've toggled it to no. So we want to make sure that we reset that back so they don't get an error potentially of, hey, this field is required, even though they can't select it. So you want to hard code, if you will, that information in here so you don't have that particular problem. And then at the end here, the reason why we've got some extras is we also want to make that blank clear. So we're basically setting it to clear for the selection. And that's really all that this does is turn something visible, set it as required, and then if it's a no, the opposite, and then clearing the fields out. And it really is just that simple. So if we go back in here, let's go back to an expense here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at one of these that has mileage entered. So we'll edit this, and we'll see all of these fields are required. Now I might be asking, well, why didn't you make these required over here? These are all calculated fields, so I didn't want to set those as required. Plus, I don't allow them to edit them anyway. There's an automation that runs and does some calculations and puts the information in here whenever they add it in here. So it wasn't necessary to include that as part of a required, or even for really, that doesn't need to be visible, but they can't change these. So I always make it visible, but they can see the final outcome after they've saved and then they refresh. This information will populate in there. So it's going to basically, this is, I believe, a calculated field where it just does some simple math of end odometer minus your beginning odometer, and that gives you the number of miles. And then this is a lookup as part of the automation where it goes to say, okay, it's this year for this expense. What is the mileage rate for this expense? And this accounts for maybe you've got a missing expense from last year and you got to put it in there. It'll pull in last year's information, not this year's, to make sure you've got the correct information, and then I'll do the calculation for the mileage. That doesn't necessarily need to be part of the business rule, and actually most of that you can't put part of the business rule. You kind of have to handle it other ways. In this case, I chose to go with automations, but that's essentially what we've done with business rules. Very simple use case for how you would use a business rule and very effective approach. Well, that's it for this video. I just wanted to kind of walk through how you would use a business rule to set visibility, business required, and then also to clear fields. Hopefully you found the content helpful. Until next time.